Good morning, everyone, and or afternoon. It's morning in Queensland. Welcome to today's webinar, TELedvisors webinar, with the title "Working and Thriving in Vet Schools, Corporate and Freelance Worlds." We tend to focus a lot on universities, and so today we thought we'd explore advising in different contexts, because many of us do work in different contexts. Now, we will now move on to Jack Dunstan, if you give me a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Hank. Thanks, David.
All right, so I'll just introduce you, Jack. Jack is the Senior Multimedia Coordinator in Vocational Education Design Team at RMIT. He's got a background in healthcare delivery and software development, his experience, he's got some experience in startups as well. So I'll hand it over to you, Jack.
Thanks, Hank. Thanks, Dave. And I worked freelance for many years, so I can share a lot of those sentiments and some of the pluses and minuses of working for yourself. Yeah, so my name's Jack. I'm a multimedia coordinator at RMIT. Our team only works in the vocational education space. So we build course material for either industry, which are external clients, or internal. And we have to build within the LMS that RMIT delivers, which is Canvas, but we also build in SCORM and RISE and various other environments. So I'll go through one of the more interesting journeys where we've had to sort of think outside the box. Hank, if you could go to the next slide. So our team's pretty big, as you can see. So there's around about 24 people, some ongoing, some fixed term, some are sourced by project funding, and it really comes down to what the projects are. Because we're lucky enough to be part of a larger institution, we can put on a lot of resources, but I still come across a lot of the freelance issues where you're building things that are good, cheap, or fast, and you've got to pick two of those. Just because we're a larger organisation doesn't mean we can build big, fantastic, expensive things. Sometimes we have to be really, really lean in that regard. But as you can see, it's broadly split down the middle in terms of learning design and multimedia design. And the learning design team pull apart the material, look at the tasks and the training.gov website requirements, and then direct the multimedia design team to build those learning experiences, whether they're in the LMSs or for redistributable content. And within the multimedia design team, we've got web developers, we've got animators, VR developers, 2D asset filmmakers, and so there's a really, really broad spread. And we try and create rich interactive experiences. So that would explain the breadth of skill set within the team. And of course, the assessment writers we undertake assessment-led design. So it's to ensure that students don't have any moments where they get to an assessment question and don't remember seeing that material presented to them in the course material. If you go next slide. So project management style is pretty straightforward. So we do our investigation, we plan it. We use various tools to work out how we're going to deliver it and then implement these courses. And we generally build very, I suppose, large courses. We're building a plumbing course at the moment, which has got 26 units. We've got a nursing one, certificate 2, that's running into next year, which is 80 units of competency. So they're quite large. So we do have quite a rigorous project management delivery model, just so we don't miss anything. And as you can imagine, my background is, not necessarily in education, but I've been working with RMIT for 2 years. But you can imagine some of the material, when you're looking at 80 units of competency and 80 assessments, they all start to look the same after a while. And there's only so many ways you can say things like plumbing and, get your head around the terminology. So quite a strict project management approach is something we have to implement, just so we can, I suppose, not go mad with some of the material that we're delivering. Next slide, thanks. And the learning design process is directed by the learning design team. And really, when it gets to the build stage, that's where the multimedia team comes in. And being the coordinator in that role, I oversee the build and the testing and the review. Next slide. So one of the first tasks we were given a project where we were building a Certificate 3 in individual support, which is, I suppose, in the old days called a sort of a nurse's aid role, or a PCA. So these are people who do a lot of the day-to-day grassroots level work in disability support and aged care support. And it was a larger budget, and the delivery of this was going to be in Canvas, and RMIT was rolling out Canvas for the first time in its first year, which was last year. So it was a new LMS. It was new to everyone on the team, and to everyone in no one in our team at that stage was about 6 or 7 had worked at RMIT before. So we had a pretty steep learning curve. And my background in software development and web development, we wanted to build rich interactive experiences in Canvas, and we looked at a couple of tools. We looked at things like Tumult Hype, we looked at H5P, we also looked at various other things, but they didn't meet some of the accessibility requirements that RMIT's policy dictates for web accessibility. H5P has moved a very, very long way since then, but at that time we decided, well, let's build something in WordPress and embed these experiences. So here we have, if those of you who are familiar with WordPress, you've got the dashboard back end, and we built, using advanced custom fields, a WordPress plugin, an interface where anyone, teachers, our staff, our learning designers, our multimedia designers, could build interfaces. And here we have an example of an accordion type device where each section reveals a new image. So it's a sort of a double interactive. So left is the interface, the editing interface, and the right is the outcome. Next slide, thanks. So this became, I suppose, once some of the stakeholders who were receiving this course saw this, they said, well, what else can you do? So we built a whole range of interactives. One way, course progression sort of tool, where at the very start of the course, a student or the prospective student would be asked a variety of questions related to the learning material, and that would also help govern which modules in the clustered course they might approach first. Our view is that within vocational education, there's often 2 groups who make up your cohort. Some who early career, they're looking to enter the industry, they don't have the experience, and they're generally younger. And then there are an older cohort who may be either switching careers, but also looking to get the qualification. And some might also have experience in the industry, but are seeking the qualification. So this was a good way of asking the students what they would engage with and what they liked, and pitch to them, I suppose, a more familiar bit of the course first, so they could sort of guide their own learning journey, and this would guide which parts of the course they might engage with first, and they'd sort of be eased into it rather than moving through the course in a sort of traditional linear fashion. So this is one of the learning roadmaps, and so they would be asked questions on the left and the right. The learning roadmap would sort of indicate which parts of the course that might suit their skill set and experience level. Next slide, Thanks. And so things got a little bit out of hand, and we got pretty excited with building embeddable content. One of our courses was for teaching dental technicians how to use CAD and CAM. So dental technicians, I suppose, traditionally are like jewelers, and they build prosthetic and orthotic dental parts. And this course was to teach them how to design these in a 3D space. So we're teaching them three-dimensional concepts and CAD concepts as well. And this allowed us to, in the Canvas environment, embed 3D experiences where they could sort of, I suppose, play in three dimensions. The link at the bottom shows, I suppose, the full, the broad suite of different types of interactive experiences that we deliver. But the 3D one was a lot of fun. So here's, we've got a highlighted tooth. And this, as you see on the right-hand side, there's a little button that says update this content. Only teachers would see that, and they could click through and they could upload a new 3D file that would be visible in the space. And these are all from open source technologies that we borrowed. Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Wendy. Good example there of it. And you can modify the dental mold in the space, and I suppose become familiar with that environment. Next slide, thanks. So what happened next was we were approached by a couple of organisations who were looking to redistribute content, and SCORM to us seemed like a bit of a blunt instrument, but because we'd already built this WordPress tool that did all these rich interactives that we were embedding, we put a wrapper around it, and that wrapper, enabled all these interactives and the learning material to be redistributed as a SCORM package. The condition of the funding for a couple of projects was that these packages could be redistributable for free across the national TAFE network, and SCORM is something that we'll load in pretty much all LMSs, whether it's Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, and all the other flavors as well. So what we did with one particular one, there was 12 short courses, and there were also some AR experiences, augmented reality experiences to support. And this was around CNC training. And in the vet sector, you've got apprentices working on tools, but in this instance, the tool is a $10 million CNC machine, and you generally just can't allow apprentices to go in there and have a play. But by building an augmented reality experience, they could become familiar with the machine, make those mistakes. And this was a web app that is being rolled out in the next couple of months to support the other short courses, which were delivered through a SCORM environment. And Akuma, the industry partner, who were CNC. What is CNC? Computer notated something or other. It's basically, you take a block of steel and you tell the computer which bits to cut out, and it creates really, really precise and exact machine parts. Really, really important for aircraft, cars, telephones, where everything needs to be down to, reverse 3D printing, pretty much correct. Yeah, subtractive manufacturing. So they could engage with this machine with the AR app and become familiar with it. By the time they get to the workplace, the machines are familiar. Next slide, thanks. So as you can see on the left, here's the WordPress authoring environment, and the learning design team and the multimedia team, and eventually end user could modify the course content, and this would be outported in a SCORM package. It means that the development environment can be handed over to the end client, and they can update their own learning material, and that learning material could stay updated. So it's a bit like, if those of you are familiar with Rise Articulate and Storyline and those sort of authoring tools, we sort of built our own because it would permit a little bit more branding and sort of richer experiences, but also meet the accessibility requirements that RMIT, which is a WCAG 2.1 AA standard. And that's pretty nerdy stuff, but it's our commitment to the student base here, because it's quite significant. It's significantly large. Next slide, thanks. So this sort of SCORM builder, like a traditional website, you could swap in a new theme, like a new skin, and even though you had already previously built all these interactive experiences, we could redistribute it for another group. And this was for the Future Social Services Institute, which is a partnership between the Victorian Council of Social Services and RMIT. And this package is a Certificate 3 in Individual Support SCORM-based package with learning material and teacher material as well. But this is available for free through FSSI to the entire TAFE network across the country. And it's pretty much an entire course. And if anyone's keen, FSSI futuresocial.org.au will have material on that for any education group who wishes to download and deliver this course complete with the material. And it's all compliant, one of the requirements before we hand it over. But this is an example of a virtual workplace that we created. So when the students do enter the workforce for real, they're already familiar with some of the workplace concepts, and really, really helpful for people who haven't had that sort of work experience. Thank you. So the next tool, we built a sort of a glossary tool, and I think probably next slide, because there's a bit of a title. Thanks, Hank. Great. So this already exists in Blackboard, but it doesn't exist in Canvas. And often in the VE space, students have to onboard a whole bunch of new definitions and terms once they enter the industry. And these terms are can be quite numerous. So we created an integration, which is a small piece of JavaScript that would search within a page in Canvas for the material and provide a tooltip with that. And this started off as an open source project, which we presented and has now been rolled out to. It's really quite a cheap and easy thing to develop, but has been rolled across the entire RMIT network, and really, really helpful for students in the VE sector. Next slide, thanks. And next slide. So these are a couple of other things. I'm conscious of time. We've built a workplace entry tool. So this is an app. This is in prototype at the moment. We're trying to get a little bit more traction from the VE schools to support this. Currently, schools are using all sorts of varieties of recording workplace hours. So this is one that uses a Canvas rubric, or the LMS rubric, to record student hours. So there's less copy and pasting by teachers. Good question, Hans. This works along, I suppose, differently from in place. So in place is probably better for long placements, higher ed, nursing placements. But if in the VE sector, if the student only has to attend 10 hours, setting up an in-place account is a little bit more cumbersome, and a lot of schools are just using paper, which makes it difficult for record keeping and accreditation purposes, but also opens up to fraud if you only need a signature of one of the workplace supervisors. So this is in current prototype at the moment, and uses Canvas, the LMS, as the back end to store the supervisor information. Next slide, thanks. We're also really, really lucky to secure some funding to build a couple of virtual reality experiences for the Certificate 3, and these were to develop empathy for students doing Certificate 3 in individual support, to understand pretty much what it's like to be talked over if you're a person with a disability or person who's by people who are supposed to be your primary caregivers. So in the experience, you witness what it's like to be the person who is infirmed or who is disabled or non-verbal, and experience both sides of the experience. Basically the right and the wrong way of engaging with people. So there you can see two examples of that. And this is to support workplace learning in this group. This wasn't course content, this was really around it, because not every institution is able, this was redistributable, not every institution will have a virtual reality headset or the tools to deliver that or the avenue to do it. So it's really nice if you've got it, and all the material that was handed over with this can be delivered. We've also built a couple of 3D videos. So the virtual reality experiences are passive. The student experiences it by putting the goggles and the headphones on. But there's a 5 version, which is on YouTube, and I'll put some links in there as well. Next slide, thanks. Yeah, and we talk a lot about what we do, and we try and share as much as we can with other groups in TAFE, because funding is tight and difficult, and we try and make the most of what we've got. And because we're using a lot of open source and available resources, we do try and share out a lot of the things that we've learned from other people. So our blog address there is quite handy if you want to see the other sort of work we're doing and how we collaborate with other groups. Quite happy to take some questions that I haven't addressed directly in the chat.
Thanks very much, Jack. Just maybe one question.
Sure.
There's a question earlier on by Simon. How well does the shift towards product managers seem to work, i.e. away from educational expertise?
I'm just scrolling up. I suppose the product managers are the schools. So we generally produce things and then hand them over. So the maintenance and delivery after that is taken on by the end user. So we're a centralized team, and we hand over the learning material to either the schools to deliver or the industry partners to deliver. There's a handover document. We try and help them learn how to drive the course, but we usually expect that their educational delivery model is sound enough to do that anyway. But these are, in some ways, they're educational products, but sometimes they're also sort of experiences. So how they're delivered comes down to how they see fit, really, because they're generally the client that we're building for.
All right, I think we're going to have to leave it there, Jack. Thanks very much. That was very good.
Okay, no trouble. Thank you.